What is going on? Welcome back to another episode and a brand new season of It's a Blast podcast. My name is Mike, also known as the EOD Happy Captain on X. Today, I'm sitting down with the one and only Captain Chowdah Hill, the commander of the USS Eisenhower, back fresh from a deployment in the Red Sea. Today, we're talking about his leadership style and social media. Let's get started. Welcome to the It's a Blast podcast. My name is Mike. Here, I talk to members of the veteran and military community about their leadership style and how the military has affected their lives. Let's get started. What is going on? I am sitting down with Captain Chris Chowdah Hill, the commander of the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, back fresh from a deployment on the Red Sea. Today we are talking about his leadership style. We are talking about social media and how do you manage over 5,000 sailors on a ship. Sir, how are you doing this morning?
Good, Mike. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think, look, you gave a master class on how to conduct social media operations, how to take care of your sailors. And so this is a conversation that I've been looking forward to for quite a while. But I think in order to have the conversation, we have to kind of start at the beginning. And so why the Navy? What made you want to join?
A good question. So my dad was in the Navy in early 70s on the USS Kitty Hawk on an aircraft carrier as an aviation bosun mate equipment, ABE. So he was a guy working the catapults. And I just wanted to impress him. I think that's the case for a lot of people. You just want to impress your family. You want to make them proud. And he said to me, do not go enlisted, go officer. I said, okay, Dad, I don't even know the difference. But I actually wore his uniforms as a kid and I destroyed them everywhere. And I eventually, no kidding, I ended up on the USS Kitty Hawk in, I think it was 2007, 2008 on his last deployment. So it was kind of cool being on the same ship as my dad. And he had passed away prior to that. So he never got to see me there, but I think he'd be very proud.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I came from a military family as well. So my dad was in for a little over 30 years. Same conversation. Oh, wow. Almost. It's, I said, hey, I'm thinking about joining the Army. At that time, I have two older brothers, right? So they were both in the Army as well. It was the height of GWAT. And my dad was like, yeah, don't join the Army. And I kind of was like, wait. I was like, what? And he was like, just,
he told you to join the Air Force?
Well, he told me,
that's what he said.
He said, go to college for a couple of years first. So I went to college for 2 semesters and, pretty much failed out. And I said, I'm going to enlist. And he was like, and I always thought, he was an officer. So I always thought, he was going to be upset that I enlisted. He was not. He was very proud. And then, of course, as happenstance, as circumstances would have it, I became an officer later in my career. So you're from Quincy, Massachusetts, correct?
That's right. Yep. Birthplace of Dunkin' Donuts and 2 presidents.
So you're not a Starbucks guy then, huh?
No. It's blue collar. It's a tough city and very proud to come from there. It's right next to Boston, but we don't say we're Bostonians. We just say we're from Quincy.
Perfect. Hey, so I want to talk a little bit about your career path because you've had quite an interesting career. I mean, you're a pilot. You have, over 2,700 flight hours. You were a Top Gun instructor from, 2001 to 2003. You were the 2001 Naval Flight Officer of the Year. And so I guess the question that I have, I don't know a whole lot about the Navy, but how do you go from being a pilot to being the commander of an aircraft carrier?
Well, technically, I'm a naval flight officer, which is really the backseat guy. And I ended up going to flight school in 1996, and I got selected for E2 Hawkeyes. And it was a good job for me. Gives you an opportunity to be a mission commander and actually lead the air battle, which I loved. And you get to work with a crew of 5. So anytime the plane broke down anywhere, you had an instant party right there. You could go out anywhere. So good times there. But eventually, if you stay in long enough, and I didn't really want to stay in, I was trying to go JAG Corps. I wanted to be a lawyer. I originally wanted to be an intel officer, but they took that option away in 1995. So I kind of got pulled down this path. And after my first sea tour with a squadron, I ended up going to Top Gun as an instructor. I was the first Hawkeye instructor there, E2C Hawkeye guy. So my expertise was in communications and how to speak on the radio. And I got to fly in the Hornet a little bit. And we actually had F-16s that we got from Pakistan. Got to fly in those. Stayed that path, became the XO and then CO, or second and first in command of a Hawkeye squadron. So at this point, I'm like at my, I don't know, 17-year point. And so if you do well there, you can move into the nuclear power path. So I'm technically an aviator nuke. There's not that many of us. I think there's like 46 of us. Several are admirals now. Several are in the program. But what you end up doing is you have to go to nuclear power school with all the young people, like people fresh out of college, people going into submarines or going to surface ships with nuclear reactors, like aircraft carriers. They all have 2 nuclear reactors. And they put you through this grueling school, all academics. It was horrible. I'm a poli-sci major. I did take physics and calculus. They said it was all going to come back. And I said, no, it's not. It's gone from my brain. So I had to kind of learn from scratch and do all that stuff. So you make it through. That's about a year and a half of academics, very painful. And then you become the executive officer of an aircraft carrier, so you can start learning ships. Because although you've been on multiple aircraft carriers, you don't really know how they work. And so you learn how they work. You learn about the administration, all the different departments. We have 20 departments on the ship. It's huge. The crew of the carrier is about 3,000, and then we bring on the air wing and different staffs, and that ends up being about 5,000 people. So after you do that XO job, if you survive that on the carrier, you go become the CO of what we call a deep draft. It's just like a medium-sized ship. And mine was a LPD-24, which was a troop carrier, basically for Marines, amphibious warship, the USS Arlington. And that was awesome. I didn't know anything about amphibious operations, so I learned a lot there. And then you go on to be the CO of an aircraft carrier. And that's kind of where I'm at now. Just about a year, a little bit more than a year. I joined in March 2023. So, and I think I have about a year left. So that's the path. It's a long path. I'm at 28 years in the Navy now and kind of getting right up there to the 30-year mark where you either get selected for admiral or you have to get out.
It's a pretty crazy, career path, right? I mean, going from from flying to commanding, to 5,000 people. And so, that's kind of one of the things I really want to talk about today is you pretty much gave a master class on social media on how to highlight individuals and how to, recognize your people. You're doing it with cookies in the command seat. But, so I want to talk about that. I also want to talk about what do you learn on a ship, of 5,000 people where you have so many different crew sections? I mean, I guess you did a lot of walking around the ship is what it seemed like from social media and learning about the ship yourself, So what was that experience like for you?
Yeah. So there's 2 ways I can approach this question. One is my command philosophy and how that, played out on the ship, which is so much bigger than my very minimal social media presence. It's actually a very small part of my life. And then we could talk about how I got into the social media thing, because I am not a social media guy. Okay. I was always nervous about posting on Facebook, and Facebook was all I had. But going back to the philosophy, the great thing about this career path is you have many years to kind of reflect and figure out what you did right and wrong in previous command tours. So you end up doing 3 command tours, plus an executive officer tour. So a lot of leadership experience at kind of a big level, anywhere from 150 people in the squadron to several thousand later on. So that doesn't mean you're a great leader by any. You could be a terrible leader and just keep moving through that path and getting by on the backs of your sailors, right? Or you can try to drive culture. So I showed up to the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower in March of 2023. The crew was a little bit beat down, and I think it was because most of them had done back-to-back deployments during COVID, so they never got any port calls. So they were naturally kind of pissed off, and that was expected. But I saw a lot of talent there, and I made the claim that we were the best damn ship in the Navy, and I said it every single day. Now, whether or not it's true doesn't really matter. It's just what our vision is, where we want to be. And you have to understand that the best damn ship is not the ship itself. That's 47 years old. I mean, this thing is old. It's leaky. It has issues, but it still worked. But the ship are the people. It's the crew. And I think people eventually understood that. Still working on it because you still get about 30 to 60 new people per month. There's a lot of turnover constantly happening. So I came up with a philosophy called the way of the warrior sailor. And in there, the main hypothesis is this: morale leads to success, right? This is something I think not everybody, a lot of people in the military intuitively know that if you can get morale up, you tend to be a little bit more successful. You tend to have a better reputation, right? Why does that happen? Well, one thing we figured out, and this is me collaborating with other COs and over time, I didn't come up with these ideas on my own, was that if we could create morale, we would do better in inspections. If we went to combat, we'd be more successful there. And so we tried to try this out. So how do you create morale? First of all, what is morale, right? Morale is not happiness. It is not necessarily more time off like I have right now. It's not that. I'd rather be working. Morale is largely associated with job satisfaction and being recognized for that job. So you have to work. Now, there's a kind of a limit there. You can't overwork people, then you start going against morale, right? But anyway, to create morale, you start with loving and valuing your people. And I say you have to love and value your sailors. You have to show it. There's probably 100 different things you can do to show that you love and value people. And it starts with actually using the words love and value. And you don't hear the word love in a military context that often. So that's probably the one innovation about the way of the warrior sailor. So it starts there. The second thing is you have to give everybody mission and purpose. They need to understand what their job is. They need to understand why it matters to the mission. This is a challenge on a ship where you have people that maybe their only job is cooking food all day long, right? I mean, we serve something like 17,000 meals a day for 5,000 people. Now, if you do the math, it means people are eating more than 3 meals. And that's true because we offer mid-rats. It's like the 4th meal right around, late at night. Because, people are on duty 24/7. It's just, the same as any military unit, right? So mission and purpose. And it means communicating a lot, reminding people why they're out there. It means, for example, when we were in the Red Sea, I would always talk about what happened the previous day, said, and praise people for doing a good job. And I would talk about what's happening coming up, right? And so just constant communication. And part of the way the warrior sailor talks about communication, we always hear the term communicate, communicate, communicate. Like that's the way. Like, how do you do that, right? How often do you need to speak, right? My thing is you speak all day long. You never stop. I have the advantage of being on a ship where we have a 1MC. It's like an interphone that connects to everybody and everybody's required to listen to it. Not that everyone does, so I feel like I'm repeating myself, but if you're beating a dead horse, you're probably doing the right thing, right? So constant communication with the crew. Email is probably the lowest form of communication, but sometimes you got to do that too. But talking to people on the 1MC, going to their spaces and engaging with them one-on-one in small groups or whatever. Another thing I ended up doing was CO's calls. Do you have that in the Army where you kind of bring everyone together and you just talk about your philosophy or whatever?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. So normally when you take over a command, you would do a CO's call and just like bring everybody in. But if I showed you what 3,000 people look like on a flight deck and, with the heat and the ship moving, it's just not the best environment to have like a personal conversation. So What I did instead was CO's calls of small groups of about 15 people. And so every day for the first several months, I bring them into my office, about 15 people, and we just talk. I would tell stories. I'd talk about the way of the warrior sailor, what we're trying to accomplish, the mission, all that stuff. And, what's funny is leading up to deployment, I said, hey, we could go into, some serious stuff. I didn't know what that stuff was, but I also said, hey, it looks like it's going to be a pretty normal deployment. And I talked about this a lot. And I was planning about 6 different port calls, which is a quintessential Navy thing to actually go to ports and see the world. And it's one of the reasons why sailors join. So I was talking about that a lot, which port calls we're picking. I was taking inputs from sailors. It was awesome. All of that changed later on.
Right.
But what was interesting is as we started to get morale a little bit higher, we started doing better in inspections. In fact, we got inspections on us during the deployment while in the Red Sea. I would bring the inspectors in and say, okay, here's what happened yesterday, and here's what just happened as you were landing, and give them kind of a rundown of the tactical situation, and their eyes would be wide. And I said, thank you for coming for this inspection. We're looking forward to kicking ass on it, and we would. So we just got better and better. And of course, we did well in combat as well. As you can see, we came back unscathed despite what the enemy said. And that's just the way it is. So the Way of the Warrior Sailor is a little bit about that. I actually sent you a copy on email just a second ago.
Yeah, I saw that.
So you can
I'm
kind
looking
of
forward to reading
that.
it.
Yeah. And so that was the overall philosophy. And so what happened with social media? Okay, so a guy who doesn't care about social media, I'm nervous about it.
Right.
So, because I had a little bit of a Facebook following, it's just friends from home and past work or whatever. And I occasionally put some family stuff there. So I met with my public affairs officer because we got Wi-Fi on the ship. So one of the things we tried to do was add a bunch of morale enhancing type things. We added a USO center. We basically collaborated with the USO and we built an entire space that looks like a pub where people can come and relax. We got the Wi-Fi installed. We had 3 Starlink antennas, but when you have 2,000 people on 3 antennas, it does not work very quickly, but it was good for, texting. If I wanted to upload a video, it would probably take about half a day, just for about 20 seconds video. So any video that you saw was a pain in the ass to actually upload. I just leave my phone there and hopefully it would get there. But so I went to my public affairs officer. I'm like, hey, I'd like to take advantage of this Wi-Fi and, talk about the Way of the Warrior Sailor. And she said, okay. So she set me up on a Twitter account and I started posting stuff and didn't really go anywhere for that first month. That was like last November. And there was like this thing that popped up that said it was about the G.I. Joe aircraft carrier from back in the 80s. And I wrote something like
the one that every kid wanted.
Yeah. I said, I always wanted this thing. I had to wait till I was almost 50 years old. And that thing went viral. It went everywhere. And I started getting some followers on X. And then the FRG, I think you have this, a family readiness group, found out I had a profile. So they told all the parents and the spouses to come look at X to see what I was putting out. So I kind of wanted to cater to them. So the theory there was, if I could get the families more connected to the ship, I'm actually bonding them to the ship's culture, and that they'll pay more attention to their spouse or kids that are on the ship, and we create this like synergistic effect where it's more family-like, right? Because if you think about it, when we're on deployment, the families are our external support network. There's only so much you can do as a chief or someone that's leading. People need to talk to their external support network, the people that truly, truly love them in a deeper way. And although I say we need to love them, we got to try our best to simulate that family environment. And I realize that on a ship of 5,000 people, it is scientifically impossible, but you should at least try, right? So we were trying, right? And this was one way to kind of create that family thing. So that was happening. And then I would get a mom would say, hey, I want to see my son. And I get that because, if I see like a pamphlet from my kid's school, and if there's pictures, I'm always looking for my daughters in there, and, you get excited when you see them in like the background of a picture. So I started, just instead of just walking around, I'd walk around with my phone on me and I would take pictures of sailors. And then I said, you know what, because the mom requested a specific sailor, I'm going to bring them up to the bridge, put them in my chair. And I was like, okay, how can we make them feel welcome? Let's give them a cookie. So we did. And I didn't think that was a big deal. I thought it was just a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
And then it became the cookie posts. And so I try to do about one of those every day. And honestly, man, I think I only did about 115 the whole deployment, which means I didn't do it every day. There just wasn't enough time. And it was hard to schedule it, believe it or not, because everyone had jobs and things to do. And some people are on night shifts and I'm not. But we tried our best there. But part of the Way of the Warrior Sailor is sailor recognition. This was one way to do that. At least they were recognized by their family, and that was important. I also do the Warrior of the Day. That's a separate thing where they get a little Warrior Sailor pin you get to put on. I let them drive the ship. They also get cookies. That's fun. We have Safety Pros of the Month, people that do like a nice safety thing. They get little, certificate or whatever. And then, of course, awards, as a CEO, you can give away achievement medals or commendation medals. And I'd say we've given away almost 2,000 of those on this deployment. Now, you'd say, whoa, people criticize that and say, hey, you're cheapening the value of the award. I'm like, well, hold on a second. like most of these folks have never gotten an award. And I'm keeping them on deployment, an extended deployment for 9 months in a weapon engagement zone. And I'm not giving them any port calls, which we did not do for 6 months. So they're working, every day of the week, 6 months straight. I was like, it's the least we can do. And it costs us nothing. If anything, a medal or ribbon costs the sailor, $7 from the Navy Exchange. So it's nothing for us. So let's do that. So we did it. And so far it's been working out. So it's kind of like the background story. But as far as the social media, it sort of took off and had a little bit of a life of its own, because then the enemy got a hold of it. And so they're trolling me, and it went down that path. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it did. I think, I think one of the things that was so effective about your social media was not just highlighting sailors, but, you wouldn't respond to anything that was going on in the Red Sea, right? So, we would see what's going on in the CENTCOM AOR area of responsibility. And, you'd see the propaganda that would get posted. And there was this really good one where, the Eisenhower was sinking, right? I mean, it was going down in the Red Sea. And so, of course, everyone turns to your social media page, and there's not a mention of it, right? But there's a picture of your dog,
Right.
And it said something like, really long day here. But like it was this master class in counteracting, crisis actor narratives. Like it was brilliant. And whether you meant to do that or not, I don't know, but it was just phenomenally well done.
Well, it was, I think the first time was just an accident, where the enemy claimed that they had sunk us. I can't remember what month it was. The first time they said it. Despite every attempt that they may have made, they did not. And so it just happened to fall on a Tuesday, and I love Taco Tuesday. Every time I get on the 1MC, I'm like, Taco Tuesday, my absolute favorite day of the week. It's so annoying. But we even had some of the young fellows get Taco Tuesday tattoos on the last port call we did. And they were so proud to show me. But, that's the thing about leadership. Sometimes if you say things enough, it appears on, hats, walls, painted, T-shirts. Now it's tattoos. That's really the pinnacle of leadership communication. And one of the reasons why we say these things over and over is just to make sure people are listening. So it's kind of like a feedback loop. In the hangar bay, early on, I had a sailor that said, "Hey, I want to put best damn ship in the Navy painted in the hangar bay." I said, "That sounds great. Just make it look nice." And I was expecting the letters to be like, maybe a foot tall. They were like 5 feet tall letters, and it took up half the hangar bay. I'm like, I am going to get in trouble for this. And I have not. So far, so good. But again, the things you say get expressed by the sailors. And I think part of the lesson learned here is like, people want bold leadership, right? They want to know what the vision is. They want to know what the mission is. If you go to leadership schools, they'll walk you through how to make a mission and vision. And we've all seen them in our different commands, and companies have them too. They're usually pretty lame, right? So you got to go big. So our mission was to launch and recover aircraft to stomp on bad guys. It's funny saying that now. It's a little bold. We didn't know we were actually going to do it, and we ended up doing it, right? So you kind of lived the mission in real time. But and our vision was to be the best damn ship in the Navy. I don't have that much creativity. And there is no ranking system for what are the ships that are the best. But if you believe it, it may become true. And I think it did. At the very least, we were the most famous ship in the Navy because we got ourselves in the news quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the best damn ship in the Navy. I mean, I'm an Army guy, so you got me saying it on social media, right? Yeah. Let's go check on the best damn ship in the Navy. So you've really created a lot of issues for Army folks, right? Because we got the Army Navy game coming up in December, and like I'm very torn now, right? But what was the Navy's response to social media? If you can talk about that a little bit. It seems, in this modern kind of where we're at, social media is the water cooler. That's where everyone is at. And that's where everyone's starting to get their news. It's where they're learning about stuff. And, it seems that the military as a whole, not just the Navy, and the Army, but it seems like there's some hesitation to operate in that space. So what was the reaction there?
Yeah, I think I don't like, talking about generations that much. I don't really believe there's any real differences. But from social media use, yes, my generation a little bit more hesitant, I would say, although I know people in my generation that talk incessantly about themselves on social media, and that's fine. They want to tell their stories. But Um, I got I got some negative feedback. I guess there were concerns that I might have been revealing too much, and that's fine and that's valid. If you think about it, if the ship had been hit, then what would the tenor of my social media have become at that point, right? Am I going to still talk about Taco Tuesday when there's a gaping hole in the side of the ship? So I did worry about that a little bit. I'm like, please God, let us get through this, go back through through the Suez Canal and get out of here at some point, because we were so successful up till that point. But more often it was positivity, and I jumped on LinkedIn at the suggestion of one of my followers. I'm like, all right, I'll put it out there, and just it was almost like there was a bigger need for it on LinkedIn. But again, on LinkedIn, I'm talking to people that are more or less my age, plus or minus 10 years. X, I don't know what the following is there. It's really hard to tell, but there's a lot of parents. Where we're not reaching out on is TikTok because we're not allowed to use it. Right. I don't know if you guys have the same prohibitions.
Same. No, that's DOD1.
Yeah. And that would be a good place. Instagram is good to go. In fact, Instagram is where I'm most challenged because you have to be super creative there and have a lot of visuals. I'm finally making some ground there, but not even close to where I'd like to be. And of course, Facebook. Now I tried to break off my personal Facebook from my page, but the page is doing okay. My personal Facebook is off the charts. Too many people on there and some I don't know. So I kind of screwed that one up and probably violated some rules there, but I'm not, usually Facebook is for putting family stuff, right? So it's just interesting how this whole thing plays out. Yeah. But as far as the leadership and stuff, it's been mostly positive. In fact, I did receive a few phone calls from people I can't name who are at high levels who said, keep it up. And I said, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? I mean, you're telling a positive story. I think one of the things that you've done really well as well is you've made it less about you and more about your sailors, right? So we don't ever really get to hear about, Captain Chris Hill on there. It's really highlighting, your sailors, right? And talking about what they do and, watching them, like video clips of them, driving or steering. I don't know what the proper terminology is, right? Of the ship, which by the way, why is that steering wheel so damn small?
I don't know. It's more ergonomic. It's more ergonomic,
yeah.
Right? Because they sit on that thing for hours, right? If you had a big wheel, the traditional one would be a pain in the neck. I think. I don't know.
I just feel like it would just look cool, right? Having that big old wheel there.
Yeah.
Right? But no, you did a phenomenal job, and now you're back. I mean, so you still have about another year left on ship, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, that all worked out. So, the other part of it was just perfect timing. You have a captain of a ship in a combat zone, essentially tweeting. I don't think that's ever happened. Maybe in the Army it has. I don't know. I mean, it's just one of the reasons we didn't have Wi-Fi on ships. So, the jury's out on that because traditionally we wouldn't have that because it could be tracked. It could lead to tracking your location, but and nowadays there's a lot of ways to track locations. But so there's some risk there and, and some novelty, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. We'll see how this plays out.
I mean, I think it was, obviously I'm a little bit biased. I've been following you for the last year for your entire deployment on there. I think there's obviously some utility in doing it. I mean, getting family involved and then getting people involved that aren't family. That's the big one, right? Is you reach out to someone via social media that says, man, that looks pretty cool. I want to do that because we have so many jobs. I can only speak for the Army, right? There's 190 different specialties within the Army.
Yeah.
And what we always see, if you go look at a recruiting ad or anything like that, it's people jumping out of airplanes. It's people kicking down doors and it's big explosions. And don't get me wrong, all of that stuff is super, super cool, right? But, you highlighted people that are doing jobs that I didn't know existed. You posted, you had a post about a sailor who was inspecting, the launch cables, right? It was just down below, in a hole, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense that someone has to do that. I just had no clue that was a thing. And, and it just looked cool as shit, right? I mean, he's covered in grease and, all dirty down there. And so
There's
like you
some
did a really good
super,
job.
yeah, super dirty jobs, tough jobs, tedious ones. Um, and any of the if anybody doesn't do that job, or they don't do it right, or they don't do the proper maintenance or preventative maintenance, it will kill people in this environment. We talk about that all the time, but as you're doing the job, you're not always thinking that, right? But there are some jobs that, if you didn't do, wouldn't kill people necessarily, like cleaning. That's a big deal on a ship, right? Because it's a health issues kind of add up when you get dust in different places. And when we have health issues, any virus will spread virally throughout the entire ship. And so, the medical side, the surveillance of medical stuff, all these little things you take for granted in running a little city has to happen. And then that goes back to the way of the warrior sailor. Everyone has to believe that they're one little piece, and everybody has a tiny piece. Everyone is quintessential to that ship. I was going to say to the survival of that ship. In some cases, it is. We had in some missions. I mean, we've launched more than 150 alerts. At off hours when we weren't normally flying, which is way higher than normal, to respond to threats. And if there's probably 1,000 things that could go wrong in that chain to prevent those aircraft from taking off, but we got them off the deck. There was one day when I literally had all 4 of my catapults down. It was kind of nerve-wracking. I didn't expect there to be a problem that evening. And then we got indications that things were happening. We had to launch aircraft like now. And just in that moment, my ABEs that my dad was back in the day, they got one of those catapults back up. We had a single catapult, and we're just launching multiple aircraft off this one catapult. Again, 1,000 things could go wrong in that process to not launching it, but we got them off the deck, and we were successful because of it. Thank goodness for that. But yeah, so and then if we talk about it as leaders and say, hey, just to remind people, like if you guys didn't do that, we would not have been successful. We lose that opportunity to inspire people. And what are we trying to gain here, right? There's a recruiting piece, right? I think social media might play a part in that. I don't really understand it that well. But retention is also an issue. That's how we play a role, because we need to keep those sailors and keep, at people at the highest ranks, to have a lot of them so it's more competitive, so you get the best of the best, right? But we have, gaps in manning issues. I'm sure you guys have them as well across the Navy that we're trying to address. This is just one way to address that, is to remind people of their mission and purpose.
Yeah. You talked about, do you know roughly how many awards you gave out on ship?
Yeah. So through this deployment, about 2,000, and that was just for my 2,800 people. So I think we may have broken some records there. And I'm waiting for people to criticize me on that. But hey, it's within my purview as a commanding officer. Do I think they deserved it? Absolutely. Right. Especially after what I put them through.
No, I think it's more than warranted. I don't think we do it enough, to be quite frank. I don't think we give out enough awards for excellence, especially in a deployed combat environment where, like you said, no port calls for 6 months.
Yeah.
You're a Star Wars fan, correct? Do I have that right?
Yeah, I think that became evident because, this is the way. That is actually written in the way of the warrior sailor as well, because it is the way.
And then you guys literally had patches made, Attack of the Drones. And if I'm correct, I saw Chief of Naval Operations. So the head of the Navy was wearing one of those patches, right?
Yeah, so I knew her executive assistant, and he told me, and hopefully I don't get in trouble for this, but she is a big Star Wars fan. And I said, I got your back. So I sent him that patch and a copy of The Way of the Warrior Sailor. And she wore that patch in some pictures. I was very proud of that. So we got on the inside. And then she came out to visit us the day prior to homecoming. And, she talked about The Way of the Warrior Sailor was with the sailors, which I thought was awesome. So we got the attention of the highest levels of leadership, because I truly believe that this is the way, that method of leadership.
Yeah. No, I am definitely looking forward to reading it. You're on some well-deserved vacation time. I know you said you're ready to get back to work already, but without a doubt, eat a lot of pizza, right? And enjoy your time back in Massachusetts before you have to get back to work. Hey, sir, thank you so much for taking the time, sitting down, talking with me about your leadership philosophy, social media, all this stuff that I think everyone's really interested in, and I wish you the best of luck.
Well, Mike, I got to thank you. You were the one of the first persons I followed on X. You were speaking my language, and I thought you were an '06 like me. It turns out you are prior enlisted, I guess '03.
Yeah, that's the one.
And I was like, you are next level in terms of leadership and social media. So I did copy you a little bit. Hopefully that's a sign of endearment there. But dude, you got to keep up the work, man. I love it. In this podcast, it is so professional. I don't watch podcasts very often, but the way you do it, it's so professional. I think it starts with that microphone right there and that
That's
headset.
the one.
And I'm using this cheap ass, little headphone thing. But nice work, brother. I'm real proud of you.
Hey, I appreciate it, and I look forward to continuing our dialogue offline, sir. Have a great one.
Anytime. Thanks, man. You too.